if you were a leader, what is that biggest point you would front that should be addressed as an approach when dealing with our climate displacement? When you hear the words climate displacement, what is your first feeling? A, anger. B, hope. C, exhaustion. D, determination.
Well, when I hear that, I feel angry, but I also feel hope, because you can only restore what you have if you're hopeful.
What is that one thing you would recommend to our listeners out there, an action that they can take, however small it may be, to be able to address the negative impacts of climate change, such as climate displacement? Hello everyone, my name is Grace, and today we are back yet again with an exciting episode of Drive Eco-Sustainability, where we talk about stories in the climate change space that matter. Today I'm pleased to be joined by Kasese. We are going to be delving into a conversation at the intersection of health and climate displacement. Every single year, millions of people leave their homes because of floods after rain, or because of rain that never came. And it feels like this subject is not given very much attention. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Kasese, someone who has been at the intersection of climate change, health, and displacement resulting from climate change-related disasters. Welcome, Kasese.
Thank you, Grace, for having me. I'm a very big fan of your podcast, and it's a huge pleasure for me to be here and speak to you and your amazing audience.
Yes, so I'm quite intrigued as to why you chose to delve into quite the intricate aspects of climate change on one end, but also integrating into it health aspects and also dealing with the negative impacts resulting from climate displacement.
Yeah, a little bit of a background. I have a background in clinical medicine and community health. And when I was doing my uni, I was so much interested in the community health aspect more than the being at the hospital facilities treating patients. So in around 2019 to 2020, I was actually staying in a ghetto around Sao Paulo, Kagwa, that is called Kakajo Zone. And at that time, around 2020, there's so much flooding ongoing in Kampala and neighboring places. And at that time, I was in my last year at uni, and I had this clique of friends who were also staying around this area, and we are also university students. And we came up with an idea of cleaning the drainage channels within this community, and we started doing cleanups, which really significantly improved the drainage of that place at that time. And so, to be honest, I didn't wake up one day thinking, yes, oh, I want to do health, climate, and displacement.
Yes.
But one thing led to the other. Around 2020, we kept doing that work while I was still doing my university. And then in the same year, 2020, actually around December or November, there was a very big flood that happened in Kasese,
yes,
due to outburst of River Nyamwamba, yes, and neighboring rivers, Nyamgasani and others. And it displaced many people. So we had that from news. And I remember together with my friends, we were like, because now we had made a network, a group, a community group, where we would do cleanups and all that. So we said, how about we organized something like a campaign to go and see these people, to take food to them. And I was like, we can actually collect clothes from university students, foodstuffs, and then we organized this campaign. We did a fundraiser. We bought food, tons of food actually, and maize flour, beans, and I also collected a lot of clothes from university students together with my friends. Also, they collected. So we organized this campaign. We went and we found the people who had been displaced living in a primary school playground around, Kasese, in Kasese actually. And we brought a lot of food. So for me and my friends, when we were going, we were like, we have actually brought a lot of food. And maybe people are going to be happy and we're going to give plenty without knowing how many people we were going to actually, I didn't know. I know that we had done some groundwork and they told us the number of people. But to me, I'd never carried or had a campaign that big at that time. And for me, I saw the tracks of food that we had and I was like, oh my God, this is huge and it's enough. It's probably going to take them a month or maybe more than that. So when we reached there, I remember we engaged media from around, and it was a very, very big campaign. And when we reached a time of giving out food, families would get maybe a kilogram of posho and one cup of beans. I was so heartbroken because I thought it's going to be, enough. So from that time, I actually found a lot of cases that were really, really struck me so much. Struck me because I'd not seen such a magnitude of a disaster just from floods, So I remember I found they had spent there maybe 3 months, or maybe even more than 3 months or 4 months, I think. And I remember we found there people staying in camps of, tamplins, and the way people were living was really, really very, it was heartbreaking, So after this campaign, we were like, now how can we actually make this, how can we do this and maybe do more? So we organized another campaign, we took their food, but still it wasn't enough. So I think because it was around December, because of this huge campaign that we did, it was televised, we engaged local leadership, district local leadership, and they were able to take them from, this playground at the school where they were into a bigger place where actually up to now they are living in a camp called Mohocha. So when they were transferred to Mohocha, we realized that we could never get enough food to give these people. So we said, how about we find ways how we can empower these people on a long term and a more sustainable way. And that's how we did a needs analysis, and people started telling us what they would want. So we started doing projects with them, long-term projects. But, before that, as an organization also we were growing. We had legally registered at this time, and we started working with them on different projects. We have right now a school running there, which provides free education for the kids in the camp. We support families to do climate smart agriculture, where we are able to rent them land in camp host communities, and then also support them with seeds and also extension services to train them in climate smart farming like irrigation and all that. So it's been a journey. I didn't do this knowing that I'm starting this, but it has been a journey that I've been learning, and to be honest, I never knew that I was going to do climate health and migration or displacement.
Yes.
But I've been evolving
Yes.
due to the work that I'm doing. Yeah.
Yes. Now, from what I've picked, it seems like one singular event, floods, resulting into displacement of people, and these people end up needing a range of services in order to be able to recover. So in this case, it would need someone to be able to help the community understand that their displacement goes beyond just the fact that this is an issue that is resulting from a climate change.
Yes, yeah.
But also, as one would address it, they would have to interlink the fact that this event, the floods that has led to their displacement, is going to affect their way of life, affect their access to basic needs like education, and also affect their access to food, therefore needing resilient agricultural practices, and also to adjust in order to have access to better education, but also their housing. So I want to understand, how were you able to explain to these people during the outreach? What was the simplest way we were able to explain to them to understand, one, what climate displacement or mobility is, and how it has affected their lives, and how they have found themselves in the current situation they were in due to climate change?
So, to me, unfortunately or fortunately, it's something to do with, first of all, you cannot go within a community like this and you start off by teaching people climate change.
Yes.
It's really hard. It's really hard. If someone doesn't have a food on their table, then the last thing you can tell them is climate change. But you work with them, and then in the process of working them, you also teach them. And this is a model that we are using, for instance. So for us, what we've been doing with these people is that to link their experience to climate change.
Yes.
Because it's not that these people have just settled in Kasese. They've been there for generations, you know, and which also simplifies my work as someone who is working with them, to show them that, hey, things are changing. That's why we are seeing heavy rains that are bringing these floods that in past you didn't experience. So for us, we link projects that are empowering these people to have grit, to be resilient, but also to actually improve their livelihoods, and also to give them hope of recovery after the devastating floods that happened. And in the process of doing that, you can now actually go ahead and teach them that actually we're having a farming project with you, but we don't want you to experience, failure of crops to grow, because the changes, there are changes in weather that you can even see. For example, the floods that you're seeing, the dry spells that are increasing longer than they used to be. And so to us, it is a bit easier because we are blending action with advocacy. And I think it is something that should be working within the communities of ours, because when you go deep to these communities and you don't talk to things that actually impact them on daily lives, like how they bring food from their farms, how they are able to carry out their normal, their day-to-day activities that actually feed them and give them a livelihood, then it's hard. It's really hard if you're going to separate your advocacy from action.
Yes.
So for us, what is actually the model that we see working is when you blend it and you say, okay, we have this project that is going to support you, but here are some of the changes that we want you to undertake in order for you to actually benefit more, to see more results, more harvests than you have been having because of dry spells. For instance, I'll give you an example right now. We are doing a farming project with these people, a climate smart farming project with these people. And we are supporting them to do irrigation and also to do organic farming.
Yes.
And for instance, from our last year's reports with working with these people, we saw that the harvests and income of people we are working with increased between 10 to 12 folds, 12 times better after doing irrigation and doing organic farming. And for us, actually, we don't have to come back and preach that again, because people would want to make more profits. So they would stick to these types of, these practices that are working for them. And for us, that is the easiest way and simplest way you can teach climate education, or you can do climate education to communities. Because if you blend it within the realms of what they are doing, and you see how it increases profitability,
yes,
improves their livelihoods, they're going to embrace that because it is actually having a daily impact in their lives.
Yes.
And that's what we are doing.
Yes, so how easy now I do understand that usually when we start projects in communities, one of the biggest criticisms we get is that why do you think you're the one who is supposed to find solutions to a community? Why don't you let the community bring you its solutions? So I want to understand, what is the level of a reception of these community initiatives within these communities? Because one of the biggest challenges with most community initiatives, we find that the biggest hindrance to scalability is the community fails to adopt the project and own it as a community project. And so when, let's say tomorrow, you decide that you're not part of this community, or you would need the community to stand on its own, then it becomes a challenge. So I want to understand what was the initial reception of the community towards these projects? So,
like I told you, when we were starting with these people, we found them very desperate.
Yes.
And we also came with, like I told you, without any experience of having, apart from the community work that we are doing, the cleanups and all that, we had not actually implemented any community project, that's a long-term community project. And so for us, it was steps, because they saw us bringing food in sacks. And then it reached a time, because we were honest with them, we were like, this is very not sustainable. It's not that we are getting money off our pockets and we are doing this for you. We are fundraising, and it is increasingly becoming hard. So what we did, we sat together with the leadership and camp members, and we said, how can we support you to live a life that you had before, as opposed to us coming with sacks of maize flour and we distribute it amongst yourselves, and then 2 days later it's done. So they gave us a few things that we could do. They were like, for instance, before we were displaced, we were farmers.
Yes.
If we can get access to land, this would mean that much as we are still in the camp, we would go and plow and plant our food, and we are able to feed our households. So, and also they told us different things that, for instance, some women and young girls were interested in, let's say, learning tailoring, soap making, but they didn't know, they wanted to have, ways of generating income and all that.
Yes.
But they didn't have, for instance, sewing machines. They didn't have raw materials for soap making, for instance. And also they pointed out their kids failing to go to school because they don't have income, they can't take kids to school. So now we told them, instead of us going to fundraise and we bring you food, relief food, we're going to fundraise and we look at how we can, let's say, rent you land and you do farming yourself. Build a community school where we can at least encourage our donors to support with the payment of teachers and all that, and kids have free education. Bring you sewing machines and see how we can get you trainers to train you here, and then after you can go start your ventures. The same applies to bringing raw materials and for soap making and stuff like that. So we worked step by step with the community and engaging them. So for instance, when we hired land for them, at first, we hired them land in a place which was very dry.
Yes.
And our first project, I remember, it was a disaster for them. Most of them incurred losses because it was dry. So we said, how best can we now improve this? The good thing is that in Kasese, there are some places where they have established some local irrigation, systems.
Yes.
Because there are streams and some rivers. So they told us, if you can actually get us land in an irrigation system, that means we have constant access to water. It would make much sense. So we were able to do that for them. And we told them, hey, look, right at this point now, we don't want to make the same mistakes that we made in the first place. We want to bring you, to give you extension services in agriculture, to give you a trainer who will teach you organic and climate smart farming practices. Yes. So this trainer, first of all, we worked with the Kasese district local government, and they gave us one of their extension workers, and who understands the language. It's not someone that we've come with from Kampala, doesn't know anything.
Yes.
So I'm giving you all this because these are some of the challenges. We manufacture solutions from our boardrooms, from our offices, and we take them to the communities. But if you work and learn with the community, the projects can actually be adopted by people and owned by people, so they can be able to scale them. Right now, the farmers, for instance, we have cohorts. The first cohort of farmers that we worked with are able to do farming using the practices that they have been taught without us being there to supervise or having to pay the extension worker to go there and supervise them, because they have learned, and it also made their farming profitable because they were able to generate more, to harvest more harvests, get more income from harvests. And so it's something to do with their lives. Yes. They're improving their lives and their livelihoods. So anything, it's like if I taught you a new skill on how to earn more money, and it is, you easily adopt it. So it's the same way. These people, we shouldn't be just giving like projects, coming up with concepts without working with the people. Mm. If the project actually improves the lives of a household at a community level, there are more chances that this project will be adopted by the community, because it is improving lives. It is improving people's way of life. So people feel the need to adopt the knowledge and practice it.
Yes.
And to be honest, that is the same thing that we are doing. For us, we make sure that if we bring on a concept, we test it with the community, we learn with the community, we get feedback from them, we do iterations until it is okay for the community to continue with it, even in our absentia.
Yes.
So that's exactly what we're doing, for instance, with this community that we work with.
Yes, now I do notice that the heartbeat of the continued implementation and success of this project is family.
Yes.
Yes. And so I wanted you to walk me through what an ordinary day looks like for a family in Mokia Camp.
Well, it's a very, I get quite emotional when I'm talking about this community, because I've been with it from, imagine someone, I'll create a scenario for you to understand. Imagine someone living in a home, well-built, kids can, have a normal life, getting to a good school, and a flood comes, it demolishes your good house. Because, for instance, we have a retired, someone who was working in local government of Kasese, and this person was doing well. It's actually the chairperson of this camp. She had a very beautiful home. Her kids were going to good schools. And her home was demolished by floods and everything. Because even after, the government, the government makes sure that people don't go back because they will be flooded again.
Yes.
So the government has said, you're not supposed to go back there. Your home has been demolished. Now you live in a camp.
Yes.
In a room that is like a room where you're living with, let's say, a family of 10, and you're sharing one room in a camp. So, of course, the experience there, much as I don't live there, but I see how people are living, is really, really not good. And people would want to get back to how they used to be. And much as, for instance, I'm telling you all this work that we are doing, we have not been able to scale it to every household in the camp. So you have a family which has to wake up very early and dig, I don't know how many decimals of land to get 5,000 to be able to go and get posho to feed themselves. And you have a family where kids used to go to school, but now they all dropped out. So that's the reality of people who are living in a camp or a household in this camp. And you have, let's say, the government relief food. It comes every after, let's say, 4 months, 6 months. Wow. So it's really, really a very unlivable situation. But yeah, that's what people have been living in for the last 6 years. And the strange thing is that every year the government keeps promising them that they are going to be relocated. And up to now, from 2020, it hasn't done anything to relocate them.
Wow.
Yes.
So do you think, anyway, now this is just a true or false question. Is it a misconception? Do you think climate-related disasters only affect poor communities?
I mean, no, and that is really, really strange because, for instance, in my earlier submission, I told you that there's this person who was working in local government and she was well off.
Yes.
She had a very beautiful home, but it was demolished. So it is false. It is false that climate change only affects poor people. But they are all, I would say that they are disproportionately affected because of the situations they live in. For instance, I would give you an example of, let's say, if a flood happened in Kampala, it would not affect the same way people in Kololo and those living in Bryce because of the housing infrastructure and how vulnerable that of Bryce is. So there's a disproportionate way of how people are affected, but I would say that climate disasters actually affect everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like the fact that the keyword here is disproportionate.
Yes.
Yes. Because it seems depending on your locality, where you stay, if you stay in a flood-prone area, you're definitely going to be more affected than someone who does not stay in a flood-prone area.
Yes.
But also on the question of proportionality, I want you to share with us how people who stay in flood-prone areas are affected in terms of their health in comparison to people who are not staying in flood-prone areas. Because I want us to understand that other than the displacement, other than the sudden change of someone's life and sudden interruption of not just where you stay, but if someone has a family, then they would have to worry about where the kids are going to go to school. Then it's also going to have financial implications. You have to figure out how you're going to survive financially. You also have to figure out where you're going to get from food as well. So now, other than that, we also have to factor in the health concerns that come with these areas.
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned the nature of disasters, because it's really very important for us when we are talking about climate-induced displacement or mobility. Because we have, for instance, we have those that are sudden, like floods, which are obvious to many and usually have overnight, effect. So it has happened, and you see mass displacement, for instance, where the areas that I've been talking about. But also we have sudden, slow onset events like droughts, where people are affected slowly, but at the end they are much impacted, and they all have negative impacts on health or implications on health. For instance, when we talk about the slow onsets, I would give you a case in the northern east, I think northwest, is it not northeast?
Yes.
Karamoja area and northern Uganda, where we see malnutrition and famine. It has been very prevalent in the last few years because of increasing droughts. So you're seeing that crops are failing, and so people are having difficulties with feeding their households. And the health implications to that is that you'll see children malnourished. But also, take an example of a family which took a loan to get to do farming, for instance, and crops fail. There's a very big toll on someone's psychological well-being. So apart from the physical health, there's also the psychological part of that. And I've been a very big, big on advocating for mental health as a result of climate-induced migration or even climate change. And from my experience working with people living in Mokia Camp, I see a blended, impact on physical health and psychological health. Physical, which is very obvious because of things that I've mentioned, like families struggling to get food, so you end up with malnutrition. When you go to these camps, you see that kids are malnourished. And also there's a lot of other issues like hygiene and sanitation in these camps. So you realize that a lot of women, for instance, end up with reproductive, health issues, or hygiene-related issues.
Yes.
But which has been well documented world over. But I think there's a disparity in the research data out when it comes to mental health and climate in general. But for this one on climate displacement, it's really, really huge. Because we talk about displacement, but remember that there are people who are lost, the families that lose loved ones during these disasters. And, you don't know which kind of people are dying, for instance. It could be the head of the family who has been the breadwinner. So, you've left a family with kids, and now they have to, go through a lot of challenges to afford needs, So it's really, really a very intricate and very, something that I take personal because it's something that is not talked about. But when you look at the impact that is having, the toll, the trauma,
yes,
the financial stress that it adds to people because, well, someone has been okay and now they have to rely on relief, for God's sake.
Yes.
I mean, imagine being able to afford everything in your life. And from here, you go to here where, like, if you don't receive relief from humanitarian actors or government, you don't eat. Do you know what that means to your psychological, to your head? It's really massive. And actually, this year I am partnering with a university in the US called Medical College of Wisconsin. And we're doing a study on the impacts of mental health, impacts of climate displacement on the mental well-being of displaced people in Uganda with a case study of Mokia. Yes. So with this study, we hope to avail data that has been lacking when we talk about health and climate change, for instance. And it's not only in Uganda, but I think broadly in Africa and world over. Maybe in the global north, there's been so much to do with eco-anxiety. Yes. But I usually tell people from the global north, if you are living, for instance, in Uganda, it's past eco-anxiety. You're living stress, you're living trauma, you have everything past anxiety.
Yes.
And it is even mixed because if you have experienced a flood before and it has been disastrous and maybe it has taken away your loved one or everything it has taken, you're anxious about it happening again. So you have PTSD, you have anxiety, you have stress and everything all culminating into one thing. And I mean, the health impacts are really, really broad. And you can talk about nutrition, mental health, you can talk about physical health, but also there are other issues. For instance, in Kasese, there's a district hospital that was demolished. So we are not only talking about now people, we're talking about infrastructure as well.
Yes, yes, yes.
So this hospital was serving over, it had actually the best orthopedic services in the region. And all of it was demolished. It has been downgraded to, into a small facility where people are receiving smaller, some services, but it was huge. So we're talking about facilities being demolished by these floods. We're talking about, people themselves being affected. So these disasters have a very, very huge impact on both public health and individual health.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching the video this far. If you have made it to this point, then it means that you are intrigued and interested in saving the environment and protecting the planet. If you want to bring this conversation to more people, you can hit the subscribe button so that we can reach further and wider. Thank you so much. Now, you did mention something about the global north and the fact that unlike the global south, there is at least a noticeable focus on the mental health, the impact on mental health that results from climate-related disasters and displacement by extension. And I think the biggest issue, like all other challenges that are experienced by the global south, is that I think it has been clearly highlighted that because of the underlying economic, political and socio-economic challenges experienced by the global south that pre-existed the documentation of climate change, the global south is definitely we are going to feel more the negative impact of climate change in comparison to the global north. So while the global north would have an opportunity to focus and prioritize climate anxiety, the global south may still be dealing with the underlying endemic issues that you have highlighted, like the mere fact that as I'm talking about climate displacement, I have to factor in that there is also inadequacy of health infrastructure to deal with health challenges. So, Crispus, I wanted you to share with our listeners and viewers, what's that story that you have encountered, without giving identity and details, story that you have encountered or someone you have dealt with, and this has stayed with you up to now, and it has shaped how you go forward when you are dealing with people who have been displaced due to climate disasters?
I rarely say this, and I think I've said it only a few times when probed so much deep. And that's exactly what you're doing. So I remember the first time I told you, when we went to the camp to do a relief campaign, I found a girl there that had been impregnated by a young boy. So a girl was 13 and the boy was, I think, 15, I don't know. But they were all minors. And the reason was because they are living in a crowded place, it becomes really hard for parents to, and they were not going to school anymore. And up to date, one of my biggest things that I fight to death to maintain is our school program in the camp. Because I know if maybe these kids were going to school, maybe this wouldn't have happened.
Yes.
So I am so big on ensuring that displaced or kids from climate vulnerable communities continue with their education because of this story. And it was really touching to me that I feel like, of course, I didn't underestimate the importance of education to children, especially girl child. But this really had, just showed me a different reality now. And up to now, for the last 5 years, we've been running this school in the camp, much as it's a pre-primary, because right now we do up to, I think, primary 3. But it's within our goals to make this a complete primary, and maybe, hopefully in the future, we can do a whole secondary. But even away from the camp, we have some kids that we support from ghettos around Kampala and Fort Portal to ensure that they continue their education. So we reach out to different people, to donors, and connect them with kids from such backgrounds to ensure that they continue to access education. And that particular reason is one of the reasons as to why our education program is so close, like so vital for me, because maybe if these kids were going to school, that girl wouldn't be pregnant at 13 years. So up to now, it's a story that...
I think I gather the fact that we ought to understand that even before we focus on climate displacement, climate mobility, we can best address it by understanding the underlying impact it has on things that we perceive as normal or not as important as housing.
Yeah, sure.
And also the time that parents dedicate to parenting and raising their children. Yeah. When all this happens, the floods, the droughts, and having to move and look for food, and now start looking for survival, all this time that could be dedicated to raising children.
I'll tell you one thing on that.
Yes.
Sorry to cut you short. In 2024, we created a documentary that is called The Reality. Your audience can maybe go and look at it. It's on our YouTube.
Yes.
It's called The Reality, Climate Mobility Documentary. And I remember we had an interview with some of the parents in the camp, and we were asking them, what is the most challenging thing about being in the camp? Well, for me, I thought it would be about, let's say, feeding parents be like struggling to feed their kids, or the financial struggles they go through, or the housing. And I tell you what, almost every parent said it's hard to raise a kid in this community. Wow. I mean, you don't know how that is deep, but if you could hear every parent saying that, you realize how life has been hard for them to raise their kids as they should, or they used to. And so it's really hard, because in this camp, we have seen a lot of girls are dropping out, and actually it's so near it's near a landing site around Lake George and Albert. So there's a lot of fishing going on there. And most of the stories that we get is that girls usually go to this area and they end up contracting HIV or even becoming pregnant at a younger age. And so that's the reason as to why most of the parents actually were telling us it's really very hard for us to raise our kids in an environment like this. So back to what you are saying, that we might look at things like parenting, for instance, as something very easy, or you don't even want to think about it when you think about, climate change.
Yes.
But the realities of displacement and people having to go into camps exposes things like that we take, as if it's nothing. And it has this huge impact on the role of parents and how they, they are able to parent their kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So now I like the fact that you have highlighted the fact that these stories are not only staying in the communities, but they are also being shared out there, so that it's not only benefiting our community, but from awareness of documenting this story, other communities can borrow a leaf, and also it could be a catalyst for more action.
Sure.
And it helps us understand that climate change is not just climate change. Like, would you know that if you find someone who is not in school right now, a young girl, 16 years, who is not in school, you will understand that it's not just the mere lack of money. It can be traced back to the fact that just a single event, like a flood,
or a drought.
A drought led to a loss of their home, and they were rendered vulnerable, and they had to figure out a means of survival, and that is how they have ended up in this situation. Yes. Now, as someone who has done this work in the community, and I'm also aware that you have had a benefit of sharing these experiences and your work on the global stage, especially at a conference of parties. Do you think these voices, the most vulnerable communities, are represented in these rooms where decisions, especially about policy and financing, which are very crucial to tackling this issue, are being addressed?
I think, to be honest, if someone is displaced or is in a community like we are talking about, it's really going to be very hard for them to even be able to attend these events or be in these rooms. So for me, I remember actually my first time going to COP, in COP 27, I left COP very angry, because from my experience, I thought that everyone in COP understands how climate change is impacting communities. But it's until when you go into these negotiations and you see how hard people are or how long it takes for people to negotiate just one text.
Yes.
To take a decision, it really shows you that there's a very big detachment of people that are negotiating for people who are actually on ground and are affected. And to me, it's actually one of the reasons as to why you keep seeing that decisions take forever. For instance, the negotiations are around Loss and Damage Fund started way back in the 90s.
Yes.
And we had a breakthrough agreement in COP27, for instance. So it's taking you decades, just because, in my perspective, a lot of people who are in those rooms do not have lived experiences. Do you really think that if someone, let's say from a community like I've been discussing or telling people, would, given power and they're in these negotiation rooms, would take that long to make a decision that is a lifeline for such a community? No. So for me, all that is happening in decision-making around COPs or these international bodies on climate change, there's a very big discrepancy between reality and people who are actually making decisions. And you're talking about representation. I mean, there's very few, or you can count them, that are usually making it to these negotiations. And even those who make it, like myself, we are not in pole positions to make final decisions.
Yes.
So it all ends up to, people with big say, And to me, it's devastating for communities like where I come from and the communities that I work with, because, we take 4 COPs discussing one line, and much as that one line now, for instance, for people who are discussing or negotiating around loss and damage or adaptation, tomorrow, for people that you are discussing around adaptation, you'll find that they have lost everything, so they cannot adapt. So you had the chance of mitigating, you didn't do that. You didn't provide resources for a community to mitigate. You didn't provide resources when people can adapt. You didn't provide resources for people to, for people who have incurred losses and damages. And now what is left? Because for these communities, it's a matter of life and death. But for, people who are in decision-making, I see COP as another political instrument, I'm sorry to say, because there is no, you feel like there's no humility of reality, that is happening. And I usually actually tend to feel that negotiators from countries like small island states actually feel as so compassionate, and whenever they are negotiating, you feel like it's more like, African negotiators, they feel the need, But then the global north, which is actually having the biggest responsibility in this whole thing, they're always so laid back and trying to push or step on every decision. And it makes really, hard for decisions to come in time or on time to support actually communities on ground.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's now for our viewers out there, those who are not familiar with what COP is. COP is the Conference of Parties, which is an annual conference that takes place, and member states who are signatories to the Paris Agreement of 2015 get to deliberate and come up with policy positions and documents to adapt and mitigate climate change, while loss and damage are the unforeseen, unavoidable negative impacts of climate change. Now, Crispus, a while back, I did meet someone who usually participates in these negotiations, and they said that as someone who is interested in impacting and helping their community adjust to climate change, sometimes their unpopular opinion was that you don't need to attend COP because COP is not going to benefit much your community. So now and honestly, it's something I did get to understand, because an ordinary person in Kasese, Mokia, for example, they don't care. They don't know about COP. They don't even care about what happens there. they will not even get to know that the conference did take place.
Yeah.
Yes. So how best do you think that despite all the challenges, because for COP, it's more about policy and then policy positions, then we get to implementation of these policy positions. So how best do you think local communities not interested, do not care, and even if they were, they are not going to achieve much from these conferences. What would you recommend that could be done to ensure that these communities nonetheless are able to benefit from the advantageous positions created by policy positions taken from global conferences, but they can trickle down to local communities?
First of all, I want to also agree with your friend who said it's really like very hard. And to me, like I said, in my first experience, I had thought, oh, I'm going to COP, I'm going to represent these voices, I'm going to be vocal about things that we are seeing. And I got a shock of my life in my first COP. So actually, right now, the COPs that the previous COPs that I've been going to, I've been going there as someone to look for partners for the work that we are doing.
Yes.
Because COP is a platform which brings together different stakeholders in the climate space, where you get different organizations and different funders, and to make these networks. So I actually changed my direction on this. I go there in the negotiation rooms and I participate, but my top priority going to COP is usually to see how I can strike partnerships, collaborations to support actually people on ground. Now for local communities, honestly, just like you said, it's local communities or people where we come from are not interested in participating in COP.
Yes.
What they want is an enabling environment for them to thrive. And that goes back to our leadership, because I usually tell people that, and I think I've even said this to you, that climate change is a development issue.
Yes.
And there's someone who say that it's to climate action is how you manage risks. So as our leadership or our government, we need to ensure that within our internal or local financing, we create an enabling environment for our communities. Yes, we can lobby from these multilateral finance institutions and all that, but it has to come back to us as leaders, as our governments, as our institutions, to ensure that we are in better position to address climate change. Because for God's sake, it's our communities, it's our people. So as much as these people can always promise, they are not much affected, to be honest. Yes, they are affected to some extent, but if our communities are not harvesting good yields, it's us that are suffering. It's our economy that is suffering. If our kids are not going to school, it's us as a country that is suffering. So for me, it goes back to our leadership, our leaders in the country, because we also have to know that we have resources. We have a national budget that is usually, like every year we have a budget. So how do we prioritize a resilient kind of development that ensures that at the grassroots, people are empowered to build resilient infrastructure, resilient farming systems, resilient transport systems, resilient health infrastructure, and all this, because you need to know that also when money comes, it doesn't go directly to the communities. It comes through our government. So it's upon our, and I'm talking about the global south. It's upon us to also redefine our priorities as countries to ensure that when we are doing programs, they are sensitive to, climate change, to building systems that are resilient, and building infrastructure that is here to last for generations. I remember there's a conversation that I usually have with one of my friends, and we keep saying that, but when you look at Europe, for instance, all these structures have been built in I don't know how many years ago. Like some of them are as old as, I don't know how, 1,000 years. And up to now, they are actually what? They are in good shape. They are strong to climate impacts. So I think that should be the direction as countries in the global south. Our development should be that futuristic, should be planned, because most of the times, the challenges that we have as our communities is that our development is really not planned, We are in an era of climate change where we know that droughts are so much, or weather is unpredictable, but still our communities on ground are not supported to adopt things like irrigation. They still rely on rainfall, for God's sake, to do their farming. And when rain doesn't come, communities are not able to get food.
Yes.
And they end up, you keep seeing how people in these areas, you see the Prime Minister's office taking their food.
Yes.
And this is an expense that is very unsustainable. But if we develop an infrastructure that can empower communities to be empowered to produce their own food in a system that is resilient to a drought, for instance, much better, So for me, I think it's upon us as our governments, as our leaders, and like you said, our local communities. I think for them, they're always looking up to, us as leaders. And I'm not just mentioning people in government positions, but us, as also people who are leading, whether you're in NGO sector or doing enterprises, it has to be us to support these communities. Because for us, we are exposed. Like I said, if you are able to go and strike partnerships and collaborations that you can lobby to your community, do that.
Yes.
Because there's no way that everyone in Kasese, for instance, who are affected by floods, will go to COPs.
Yes. Yes.
So it's upon us, I think, to work for our communities, but especially our governments. They have to do better for them, for the way that we are developing as a nation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now, Crispus, personally, if I was a leader, from what you've shared and what I've picked is that when we are planning to address negative impacts of climate change and climate displacement, we should be planning for long-term solutions and not focus on the short-term or immediate benefits that we can get, but we should be planning and looking for solutions which are not only benefiting us, but are also going to benefit future generations, which is, of course, the primary focus and the whole understanding of sustainability. Yeah. Now, if you were a leader, what is that biggest point you would front that should be addressed or as an approach when dealing with our climate displacement?
Well, I think it depends on a few things. One, if, for instance, you're looking at communities that are in disaster-prone areas,
yes,
we have seen, like, for instance, in Mount Elgon region or in Kasese, people are encroaching on, for instance, one of the main reasons as to why we are seeing floods in Kasese is that people are also encroaching on the riverbanks of River Nyamwamba. And so there should be enforcement of, protection of the riverbanks by law enforcement, agencies and all that. But also the other thing is that we should be able to anticipate, anticipatory planning, Why are people still in these regions where we know that they are not safe for human settlement? Or why are we giving, for instance, titles in places that we know that are, for swamps and all that? So I think one of the things that we should be doing is to do a proper planning, settlement planning, People who are in disaster hotspots should be relocated to areas which are safer. And then for things like slow onset events, where we're having droughts affecting people, and usually people are moving to ensure that they survive, we need to ensure that we create an enabling environment for people to thrive where they are.
Yes.
Because people are moving due to, for instance, where I come from in Zimbabwe, people are moving, for instance, because the dry spells are making crops to fail and all that. So how about we extend services of irrigation, or we expedite costs of irrigation equipment and all that? So I think one of the we should know that, for instance, we are an agroeconomy country, and largely our people are depending on traditional farming. But up to date, most of the people still wait for rain to come to plant, or to plan for their, farming. So I think we should be in a direction of planning. How do we ensure that our agriculture is has a resilient system to droughts, And that comes with ensuring that irrigation equipment, for instance, are made cheaper to farmers, And we can't achieve that if, maybe they are not expedited in terms of taxes that are on this equipment. So I think one thing has to do with planned development or planned settlements, and the other one is to see how we can ensure that we create an enabling environment for people who are doing farming, for instance, and who are moving because of dry spells and all these things. I'll tell you one last thing, is that I'm working on a project, personal project, on how I can transform my parents' farm to be like a model farm for livestock farming.
Yes.
And I was pitching this project to a German corporate, a person is in corporate world. And they were asking me, so how do you do your livestock farming? Because I was telling them, I want to teach people how to, bank feeds, preserve it, or grow pasture. And they were like, so how do they do their farming? And to them, it was funny how for us we just leave animals to go and feed naturally without any kind of planning for these seasons, dry seasons, So I think that's the direction that we should be taking as a country. We should be empowering, farmers or communities to build systems that befits the changes that we are having, But the challenge that we have is that we are still stuck in our old systems when we have climate change, but also even the world is changing, When you look at things like the outputs that we should be getting from the farms is minute compared to the potential that we should be, having, because of the fact that we are still stuck in our old ways of doing things. Yes. So I think we need to have intentional way of planning and developing communities to adjust to the changes, but also to give them means, because most of these people are not doing these changes because they have means and they have failed to, but the actual sense is that they cannot, they simply can't. Yes. And things like that would be helping them, like, let's say loans. When you see the interest rates in the banks, it's crazy, you know? So I think we have to be intentional on how we want to do these things. And one of the things that I see that we should be taking is, you asked me the one thing that I should be doing, we should be doing, is planning our everything. Yes. It seems to me that most of the way how we do things as Ugandans or even Africans is like we end up doing things not knowing why we are doing them. We are more reactive. Yes. So I think we should be planning, and we follow our plans. And I think also one thing that we are not doing very well is that our laws are very good on paper, but we don't enforce them. I wish I could make a fortune out of how many times someone has said that. Yes, so we have good laws. Yes, a lot of countries come here to benchmark for our laws, and they go on to implement them to be better. But for us, I mean, I don't know why. Maybe I hope that changes from today or even tomorrow. But when you see the flooding that is happening, for instance, around Kampala, it's because of negligence and not following the laws that we have in place. Giving land titles in areas of swamps, and then we see malls getting, shopping malls or arcades getting flooded, and then we act as if, oh, why is this a disaster? So sometimes it's not just climate change, because linking policy to action is one of our biggest challenges. Yes. So yes, Crispus, you really hinted on planning, which is the half of what addressing climate change is. Adaptation, because the entire essence of adaptation is planning. You adapt, but you adapt to a situation, but you can only adapt if you prepared ahead of time. Yes, so now, Crispus, a quick question. Someone is going to be, let's just presume you meet someone for the first time, and they are really, because we've tried to understand that if we are going to address issues like climate mobility, we are going to have to start by answering and dealing with underlying socio-economic challenges that are plaguing our communities. So now I will start with just a quick question. So in your experience, what hits people the hardest when they are forced to leave their homes because of climate disasters? A, losing their homes. B, losing their income. 3, losing their identity. And D, losing their community. Oh, wow. It's really hard to pinpoint one thing, but for sure, if anything to do with losing livelihoods, I don't know whether that befits under income but livelihoods is the biggest issue. Because if you have your livelihood and you've lost only a home, maybe the high chances you can rebuild yourself and you build a home again. But if you've lost your income and you've lost everything, it makes really hard, because you know that finances are everything in our life. Yes. So if you have lost means of, income, it makes it extremely hard for people to recover. And that is what we are seeing for people that we work with, for instance, in Mokia. Yes. It's really hard. Yes. Thank you so much. The second question is, when you hear the words
climate displacement. What is your first feeling? A, anger. B, hope. C, exhaustion. D, determination.
Well, when I hear that, I feel angry, but I also feel hope, because you can only restore what you have if you're hopeful. But if maybe this question was to someone who is displaced,
yes,
I would presume their answer would be they would be living in despair, and not hopeful, to be honest.
yes,
And it also depends on what is the timing.
yes.
Is it post, just immediately after this, or after some time? Because after some time, as humans, we adapt and start seeing life in another way, and start developing hope for future.
Yes.
But it's hard for me to say just one thing. But for me, as someone who's been working in this area, I would want to be hopeful that life will happen again.
Hope, coupled with determination for a better tomorrow.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So yes, Crispus, mm-hmm. Throughout our conversation, I do notice that one of the central beginning points of your work is Mokia in Kasese. Mm-hmm. If I went to Mokia right now, tell me one unexpected thing that I would find there right now that you haven't shared.
One unexpected thing. So I think you would be shocked by how people live. The houses.
Yes.
I mean, it's shocking. Because fun enough, I've not worked myself with the refugee camp.
Yes.
But interestingly, I've brought people to come to the camp who have had an experience of working with refugee camps, and now seeing the way people live in Mokia Camp, which is, these are Ugandans.
Yes. And
they would say, and I hate to say this because it portrays me as if I'm drawing a comparison or of any sort.
Yes.
But a lot of people who have had an experience of working with refugee camps in Uganda, and they come to Mokia Camp, which is an internally displaced people's camp.
Yes. And
these are people who are 100% Ugandans. They say they would rather live in a refugee camp.
Wow. So that is how much people's lives are being transformed.
Yes. So imagine in a refugee camp, life is hard. But now people who have an experience of working with these camps, refugee camps, and they come to Mokia Camp, they say here life is really, really unlivable.
Yes. So one last question. What is that one thing you would recommend to our listeners out there, an action that they can take, however small it may be, to be able to address the negative impacts of climate change, such as climate displacement?
I usually tell people that that the actions that can be easily taken are within the realms of what you're doing.
Yes.
Like, for instance, if I'm a doctor and I see patients every day, and I know that patients take a word from the doctor as, like, they trust you.
The gospel truth.
Yes. So I would encourage doctors in their medical education to include, let's say, a few things. Could you please, let's say, plant a few fruit trees to add on to your diet? That one, for instance, a patient will take it as a medical advice, but it will have a very big impact on climate because, you know, the impact of trees on you know, climate change. You know, so, and if you will, I don't know which profession, there is still any other way that you can find out on how climate change is affecting, for instance, or you can contribute to climate change or climate action using your profession, whether it is legal or whether it is, I don't know, different ways. There's always a way, because if I am a medic and I'm doing this, it means that anyone else can do that, you know? But the most obvious way is I hate people littering. I hate people that litter. And I know that this is so common to everyone. And giving an example of our cities, could be Kampala or even everywhere, when you look around, there's so much trash wherever. And we keep wondering why our cities flood every time it rains. Maybe it's not actually maybe. It's actually because of the litter that we put in our drainage systems, and it clogs it.
Yes.
So at least if you can't hear anything or take anything that I've said, please do not litter. I actually hate it to an extent that if I see anyone and they're in front of me, they're driving in front of me and they're littering, I feel so bad, and I wish I had authority of taking these people to jail for some time, for them to learn a hard way. Yes. But yeah, if you can't take anything from our conversation, at least don't litter.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an exciting conversation, Crispus. Yes, and I will say it again. If you do not take anything, please, the best and the most ordinary thing you can do today, you may not know it, but you are contributing to the reduction of floods in our community, in your village, in your household. Do not litter. Let's not litter.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. For all those who are interested, I'll be sharing the links to the YouTube channel so that you can watch the documentary that Crispus was able to work on, detailing the work of climate change displacement and climate change adaptation in Mokia Camp, the center of his work in Kasese, so that you can be able to view it. Thank you so much. Driving eco-sustainability. Till next time.